Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome back. You know how I talk about it's the music, stupid. This is not one of those episodes. This is going to be a stream of consciousness video to a video I watched this morning that was posted the other night by my friends, the Jazz Bums. And I'm going to put a link below to their channel because they do a live stream and they will do occasional interviews with people and record reviews. And obviously it's centered around a group of jazz fans that are, I would say, somewhat new to it, even compared to me. I've been into jazz for about 50 years, but I tell you, these guys know more about jazz in the past 3 to 5 years, whatever. They've been really kind of diving in here than I do after 50 years. They did a conversation that they posted, and there's a link below to that as well, by Steve Guttenberg. Not Three Men and a Baby Steve Guttenberg or Rear Window Steve Guttenberg, but Steve Guttenberg, the Audiophilliac. And I was really, I connected with that video because I feel like-minded with Steve Guttenberg. He's sort of somewhat of an East Coast version of me, or I'm a West Coast version of him, but he's maybe 5 years older than me. He was a projectionist in New York City, I think, and he sold stereo gear back in the day when I was selling records at record stores. So there is that kind of like-minded thing. And there's a few things he said that I totally identified with, and I'm going to react to them and kind of pontificate, I use that word a lot, don't I, on my take on these things, because I think this is the best way. Now, when I say best, it's an opinion. And Steve Guttenberg has a sort of loosey-goosey approach to the way he presents his videos. He's not one of the slick audio reviewers with all the effects and the opening thing. He's got his theme song, repetitive thing that happens. But that's what's great about Steve Guttenberg. He goes back, I first watched him or heard him on podcasts going back to CNET days. Now, CNET was this kind of tech channel in the early 1990s. It originated in San Francisco. I remember their office building. I think once CBS invested funds in it, and maybe Ziff Davis and a few of these other publications at the time. They were on 2nd Street south of Market. And Steve Guttenberg was a reviewer and then went on to do his own YouTube channel. I believe he really dived in around 7 years ago, kind of around the time that I dived in. But of course, he's got a much larger audience. I mean, like 250,000 subscribers. Sure, subscribe here. Let's get on that chase to equal, which I'll never will, Steve Guttenberg. I don't do what he does, and I like him because he talks about music in a way that I feel that I talk about music, where the music is first. And he was asked about Audiophiles in that video with the Jazz Bums, and says, really, it's not about the gear. It's not about the perfect pressing. It's not about the master recording or anything like that. It's about someone who at some part of their listening experience actually sits down and listens to the music, pays attention to the music. Now, he didn't mention sweet spot, but that would probably align with someone sitting in their sweet spot listening to a record, a certain percentage of the time, as opposed to doing other things and texting and cooking and walking around the house. Now, I do that quite a bit. I have sessions pretty much every day for like an hour and a half where I'm constantly sitting down listening to specific records. But the rest of the day, 6-7 hours a day, I have music on while I'm doing things, whether it's upstairs in my main area or downstairs here adjacent to my record room in my office. And I love the way he talked about that. Another thing that I really appreciated with Steve Guttenberg, they're talking about him. They asked him about pressings, and there is this whole thing with so-called audiophiles where they're always searching for the next best version of a recording. Steve Guttenberg says, if I love a record and it sounds good to me, I have no interest to pursue or seek out another version that may or may not be better. So he's not one that's going to go and buy these one steps or UHQRs or reissues from any of the labels. that a lot of us, or a number of us, pursue. But I really appreciate him who's so into gear that if you know a certain copy, it may not be the best recording or the best pressing, but that's the one that he loves. And I tell you, that is so refreshing coming from someone who reviews gear for a living, and that's what he's into. So I applaud that. He talked about the second Neil Young record, Everyone Knows This Is Nowhere, and how it's not a great recording, but the music is incredible. The music transcends it. And that's exactly what I try to do when I talk about It's the Music Stupid, where the music is first. Maybe I don't fulfill his vision, but as he kept saying in that entire video, it is his opinion. Back in 1967, the day this album came out, I went to a local record store. It was a store that had musical instruments and records, and I went there as one of the store employees or the manager of the store, maybe even the owner, it was my mom and pop, opened a box of these records. Now, record boxes usually held 25 copies of a record. They opened it up, and there were maybe 5, 6 of us around the counter when he did that. So it wasn't like a line of hundreds of people, but it was release day, and I happened to get there when the guy, I remember that moment, opening the box, and he pulled out copies of this, and I grabbed one and I bought it. Now, I don't remember if I knew necessarily that I was buying a stereo copy. Now, in those days, stereo copies were $1 more than mono, but it didn't matter. I wanted the new Beatles album, and that was that day. And this is the exact copy, the American copy. I since have mono, stereo Americans. Remember these great inserts. It has the original inner sleeve, this kind of psychedelic inner sleeve. And of course, you know the record. We'd sit, we'd read all the lyrics, we'd look at the pictures. This is before all those Paul or Dead clues. This cover was incredible. In that video, Steve Guttenberg talks about, in his mind, he's not a fan of mono. He is a stereo guy. I'm pretty much the same. I have mono records that I like for different reasons, but I am a stereo guy, especially this period when psychedelic stuff happened. It was stereo. The way this was mixed with the wide left and right panning, and sometimes during 67, 68, 69, the things going around your head. Now, Steve brings up, maybe it was because of headphones in his case. To me, I did have headphones, and yes, I remember that all the little things you'd hear every single time you listened to this record, you heard an extra sound, an extra bit. And mono just didn't do it. Now, I didn't have a mono till right away. Later that year, I would get, either that year or early 68, I would get a British copy, which sounded even better, and then I would eventually get a mono copy. Steve Guttenberg also talks about having a large collection, and sometimes you pull things randomly, and that kind of brought me back to, obviously, my whack-a-moles or my Music Stupid videos, where I'd pull random things, because sometimes when you have a large collection, it's not easy to choose something. Like people say, how do you choose records? Well, sometimes you're in a mood. I choose a record, and I play that record, and that leads me to play another record or something similar. I may play 3 or 4 things in the same genre, or that leads me audio-wise, sound-wise, but all of a sudden one song or one part of a record will make me, like a sense memory thing, think of, oh no, I remember when I heard that. Steve Guttenberg said a brilliant thing, which is, it's obvious, and it should be obvious to all of us, but we don't really think of, this collection is my life. These records, and I've said this in some of my videos, it's not only It's the Music Stupid, but Memories of a Vinyl Junkie, where I chronicle a year in my life, semi-autobiographical. There's a playlist here, go check it out. But when records came out, what I was doing, who I was dating, where I was traveling, the losses, the loves, the experiences, that's what our collections, or a collection like this, that is pretty large, that's what they mean to us. And you could go through genres and tastes, and I've said this, and I'm going to probably close out with this. I think that's enough. But In 1995, I sold a third of my collection because of the CDs, the better format, which is kind of bullshit, really. But we learned. We made a mistake, but at least I didn't get rid of everything. And I got rid of some of the wrong records, thinking, oh, these first 3 band records are my favorites, so let's get rid of the band records and buy the CDs when they come out. Well, I didn't make the mistake on all bands. I kept the Kinks, kept the Byrds, kept the Beatles, kept the Stones, kept the Who, kept Bob Dylan, but certain artists that I think, why did I get rid of that? But certain artists I kept because the tastes were different. For instance, in the early 70s, I was into Graham Parsons and Emmylou Harris and roots music and the Burrito Brothers and Bob Dylan and the singer-songwriter stuff too. But by 77, 78, 79, the Ramones, the punk years, the Sex Pistols, the Clash, even some, weird things in 1980, post-punk things. I remember getting the imports of Joy Division and the Factory Records and Throbbing Gristle even, because the conceptual side of it just excited me. And I would buy those still on vinyl, thank goodness. Same with those post-punk things before I really dived into CDs in, 86 or so, whenever that happened. But I, thank goodness, didn't get rid of those Graham Parsons records or the Emmylou Harris records or James Taylor even, because they weren't, quote, hip at the time. We learned later that a lot of those artists were influenced by the Graham Parsons and the Burrito Brothers and obviously Dylan, we know that. But 5 years, 10 years later, my taste came and I went back to the Jackson Browne records and I went back to the rootsy records, to the Doc Watson, the bluegrass, the new, the Tony Rice newgrass things. You change as you age and you get older, and I still love, putting on a punk loud record. I just showcased, I finally got again a record that I had that I got rid of, Radio Birdman, the Australian punk band. And I put that on. It was like friggin' great listening to that again. So unless you absolutely have to get rid of a record because you have to downsize or you have to sell it for financial reasons, keep those records, because all of a sudden in a few years, the odds are maybe that you're going to come back and want to hear that great acoustic David Grisman record again, not just some weird avant-garde, there I said it, there's a drinking game when I say avant-garde, or Fluxus thing happening. So Steve Guttenberg and the Jazz Bums, thank you for exciting me again about this. That's what's exciting about doing. He loves doing YouTube videos. Don't take yourself so seriously. Sharing the music's stupid. The music is first. The music is first. That is the mantra. The music is first. And then listen to the music. Anyway, I'm a fan of Steve Guttenberg. I'm a fan of the Jazz Bums. There are links below to both their channels. Thanks for listening to me again. And Sgt. Pepper in Stereo is the bomb. Mazzy loves you.